The Grand Plaza Hotel shimmered like a jewel in the evening light, its marble façade and crystal windows reflecting the setting sun. Guests in designer clothes floated through the lobby, heading toward the grand ballroom where my brother David's wedding would soon begin. If they noticed me standing quietly by the concierge desk, they didn't show it. "Miss Carter." Thomas, my head of security, approached discreetly. "Everything is prepared according to your specifications. Though, are you sure you want to attend as a regular guest?" I smoothed my simple black dress, elegant but nothing like the elaborate gowns the other women wore. "Yes, Thomas. Let them have their moment. For now." He nodded, professional as always, but I caught the slight frown. Thomas had worked for me since I bought the Grand Plaza 3 years ago. He'd seen how I'd transformed it from a struggling luxury hotel into the most exclusive venue in the city. He'd also heard enough snippets of phone conversations with my family to understand why I kept my ownership private. "Your parents just arrived," he murmured. They're making quite an entrance." I turned to see Mom and Dad sweeping through the lobby like royalty. Mom's designer dress probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Dad wore his success like armor, greeting other guests with the practiced charm of someone who thought money meant power. "Isabella." Mom's voice carried across the marble floor. "He actually came. And you're wearing that." I resisted the urge to touch my dress self-consciously. It was Chanel, though they didn't need to know that. "Hello, Mom." "Dad." Dad barely glanced at me, too busy waving to someone across the lobby. "At least you made an effort to look presentable. David's big day shouldn't be overshadowed by family embarrassments." Family embarrassments. That's what they called me ever since I declined Dad's offer to join his investment firm 5 years ago. Instead, I'd taken my business degree and inheritance from Grandma and disappeared into the hotel industry. They assumed I'd failed, probably working some mid-level management job at a chain hotel. If they only knew I now own not just the Grand Plaza, but a chain of luxury hotels across 3 continents. "The ceremony starts in an hour," Mom said, checking her diamond-encrusted watch. "Try not to draw attention to yourself. This wedding is costing a fortune, and everything must be perfect for David and Catherine." I bit back a smile. The wedding was indeed costing a fortune. About $300,000 for the venue alone. I knew because I'd personally approved the invoice, though the family thought David's future father-in-law was covering all expenses as a wedding gift. "Of course, Mom. I wouldn't want to embarrass anyone." "That would be a first," a familiar voice cut in. My brother David approached, champagne in hand, his custom tuxedo making him look every inch the successful surgeon he'd become. "Remember Isabella's college graduation? When she announced she was going into hotel management instead of finance. Dad nearly had a stroke." They laughed, the sound echoing off the marble floors. I remembered that day clearly. Not just their disappointment but the determination it had sparked in me. While they mocked my career choice, I was learning every aspect of the hotel business, building connections and slowly acquiring struggling properties to renovate and rebrand. "At least she had the sense to get a real job eventually," Dad said, though he had no idea what I actually did. Our conversations over the years had been brief, usually ending with some variation of, "When are you going to do something meaningful with your life?" A hotel staff member, one of my employees, though they didn't know that, approached with a message for my parents. There was some issue with the flower arrangements that needed their immediate attention. "Probably some mix-up with the second-rate vendors," Mom sighed. "Isabella, make yourself useful and check on the table arrangements. Since you work in hotels, you must know something about proper place settings." I watched them hurry off, then pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to my events director. "Everything going according to plan?" "Yes, Miss Carter. Though the mother of the groom is quite demanding." I smiled. Mom had spent weeks complaining about the hotel's strict policies, never realizing she was arguing with my policies, my standards, my vision for what the Grand Plaza should be. The next hour passed in a blur of barely concealed insults and backhanded comments. Relatives I hadn't seen in years suddenly remembered my existence, though mainly to express surprise that I could afford to buy a new dress for the occasion. "Still working at that hotel chain?" Aunt Margaret asked, peering at me over her champagne glass. "What is it, Holiday Inn?" "Something like that," I replied, watching as another guest praised the hotel's recent multi-million-dollar renovation, a project I had personally overseen. Finally, it was time for the ceremony. Guests filed into the grand ballroom, which had been transformed into a winter wonderland of white flowers and crystal decorations. I took my assigned seat in the back row, far from the family's reserved section at the front. As the string quartet began to play, I noticed Thomas hovering near the entrance, an odd expression on his face. He caught my eye and gestured subtly toward the lobby. Something was wrong. I slipped out quietly, finding him by the concierge desk. "What is it?" "Your father, Miss Carter. He's making a scene about the champagne selection. He's threatening to have the food and beverage manager fired." I felt a familiar tension headache building. "Where is he?" "In the kitchen. He's already reduced 2 servers to tears." I straightened my shoulders. Remember all the times they'd called me worthless, a disappointment, a failure. "Give me 5 minutes. Then implement Protocol 3. Thomas's eyes widened slightly. Protocol 3 was our code for revealing a VIP owner's identity. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I said, heading toward the kitchen. "It's time they learned exactly who they've been insulting." But I never made it to the kitchen. Because at that moment, I heard my father's voice booming through the ballroom's open doors, making an impromptu pre-ceremony speech that would change everything. "Before we begin," he announced, clearly having had too much premium champagne, "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate my son. My successful son, the surgeon, not the disappointment serving drinks at the Holiday Inn." The ballroom fell silent, but Dad wasn't finished. The champagne had loosened his tongue, releasing years of pent-up disappointment. "My daughter," he continued, gesturing vaguely toward the back of the room, "couldn't handle real business. Instead of joining the family firm, she chose to work in hospitality." He practically spat the last word. "While David saves lives and builds a real career, she probably spends her days changing sheets and restocking minibars." Mom tried to tug at his sleeve, finally sensing this wasn't appropriate, but he shrugged her off. "This hotel," he swept his arm around grandly, "this is what real success looks like. This is what Isabella could have been part of if she hadn't been so stubborn. But no, she had to do things her way. And now look, she can barely afford a decent dress for her brother's wedding." I stood in the doorway, a strange calm settling over me. Thomas appeared at my side, tablet in hand. "Protocol 3? He whispered. "No," I said quietly. "Protocol 1. His eyes widened. Protocol 1 was our highest-level security response, reserved for removing problematic guests, no matter who they were. "Right away, Ms. Carter." I watched as Thomas spoke quietly into his earpiece. Within seconds, security teams positioned themselves at every entrance. "And another thing," Dad was saying, clearly enjoying his captive audience, "this wedding cost more than Isabella probably makes in a year. The champagne alone." "Is Krug Klaus Diambonne 1998, I interrupted, my voice carrying clearly across the silent ballroom. "Specifically selected from the hotel's private reserve. Current market value, $2,500 per bottle." Everyone turned to stare as I walked down the center aisle. My heels clicked against the marble floor, echoing in the stunned silence. "The flower arrangements you complained about? Hand-selected peonies and orchids, flown in from Holland this morning. The crystal centerpieces? Baccarat, custom designed for the Grand Plaza. The chef you just berated? He has 3 Michelin stars." Dad's face had turned an interesting shade of red. "How would you know?" "Because I own this hotel," I said simply, "along with 16 others across 3 continents." The champagne glass slipped from Mom's hand, shattering on the marble floor. No one moved to clean it up. "That's impossible," David stammered from his position by the altar. "This is the Grand Plaza. It's owned by Carter Hospitality Group." "Yes," I smiled. "Carter. As in Isabella Carter. I took Grandma's maiden name when I started the company. I thought it had a better ring to it than Isabella Montgomery." Dad's mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound came out. Behind him I could see guests pulling out their phones, no doubt Googling Carter Hospitality Group. The recent renovation? My project. The strict vendor policies Mom's been complaining about? My policies. The second-rate champagne you've been drinking all evening? I personally approved that $85,000 beverage budget. But, Mom found her voice. "You never said anything. All these years. Would you have listened?" I asked quietly. "Every time I tried to talk about my work, You changed the subject to David's latest achievement. Every family dinner became an exercise in comparing me to everyone else's success. Thomas appeared at my side again. Miss Carter, your instructions? I looked at my father, still frozen mid-rant, then at my brother and his bewildered bride, and finally at the hundreds of guests who had just witnessed my family's true colors. Please escort my parents to the lobby, I said clearly. They seem to have had too much of my second-rate champagne. You can't throw us out. Dad finally exploded. Do you know how much this wedding cost? $300,000 for the venue, I replied calmly. Plus $85,000 for beverages, $50,000 for catering, $25,000 for flowers, and $40,000 for additional services. All of which, by the way, came from my account, not Catherine's father's. Consider it my wedding gift, and my last act of trying to please this family. Security moved forward smoothly, professionally. Mom started to cry, mascara running down her cheeks. Isabella, please, she sobbed. You're ruining your brother's wedding. No, Mom. Dad did that when he decided to announce to 300 guests that I was a failure. I turned to David. The venue is still yours for the evening. Get married, celebrate, enjoy the champagne. Just do it without our parents. As security led them toward the lobby, Dad's face had turned purple. You'll regret this. I'll have this place shut down. I'll call the health department, the business bureau. Good luck with that, I called after him. Carter Hospitality Group has an perfect record with all regulatory bodies. I made sure of it. The doors closed behind them, leaving a stunned silence in the ballroom. I turned to address the guests. I apologize for the interruption. Please enjoy the celebration. The kitchen will be serving dinner shortly. Wagyu beef or fresh-caught sea bass, both prepared by our Michelin-starred chef. And don't worry about the champagne, we have plenty more in our cellar. As the shocked murmurs began to rise, I started walking back down the aisle. David called after me. Bella, wait. You can't just leave. I paused, turning back. Actually, I can. It's my hotel. I smiled slightly. But don't worry about the bill. Consider it a parting gift from your failure of a sister. I found Mom and Dad still in the lobby, Mom crying on a Baroque settee while Dad argued loudly with Thomas. Do you know who I am? He was shouting. I'll have your job for this. Actually, sir, Thomas replied calmly, I work directly for Miss Carter. Have for 3 years now. And she's the best employer I've ever had. It's time for you to leave, I said, approaching them one last time. Your car is waiting outside. Don't worry about your belongings, they'll be sent to your home. Isabella, Mom stood up, mascara streaked across her face. We didn't know. If you had just told us. You never asked, I replied simply. You were too busy telling everyone what a disappointment I was. This is ridiculous, Dad sputtered. You can't just throw us out. We're your parents. Watch me. I nodded to Thomas. Please ensure they exit the property. As security escorted them out, I heard Dad's last angry shout. You'll regret this. This isn't over. Actually, it is, I murmured, watching through the crystal doors as they were led to their waiting car. It's been over for a long time. Later that night, after the wedding had proceeded without further incident, I stood in my private office on the top floor of the Grand Plaza. The city lights sparkled below, and I could still hear the faint sounds of celebration from the ballroom. My phone had been buzzing non-stop. Messages from relatives, old family friends, business acquaintances. Everyone wanted to know the story behind the mysterious hotel owner who had thrown her own parents out of her brother's wedding. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Thomas. Your brother is asking to see you, he said. He's in the lobby. I considered for a moment, then nodded. Send him up. David entered my office cautiously, still in his wedding tuxedo. He looked around at the elegant space, taking in the view, the awards on the walls, the evidence of success he'd never bothered to notice before. Nice office, he said awkwardly. Thank you. Congratulations on your marriage. He shifted uncomfortably. Bella, I don't know what to say. There's nothing to say, I replied, turning to face him fully. You all made your opinions of me very clear over the years. I just finally decided to show you how wrong those opinions were. But why didn't you tell us? All this success. Would it have mattered? I asked quietly. Or would you have found some way to diminish it like everything else I've done? He had no answer for that. Enjoy the rest of your wedding celebration, I said, turning back to the window. The hotel staff will take care of everything. Consider it my last act as your sister. Bella. Goodbye, David. Give Catherine my best wishes. After he left, I poured myself a glass of the same champagne they had all been drinking downstairs, the one Dad had simultaneously criticized and overindulged in. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed again, a message from Mom. Please let us explain. We didn't mean. I deleted it without reading further. They'd had years to see me, to understand, to care about my success. Instead, they'd chosen to believe what they wanted to believe. Looking out over the city at the empire I'd built while they were busy dismissing me, I finally felt free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's letting them realize just how wrong they've been all along. I raised my glass to my reflection in the window. Here's to the family disappointment, I whispered, and the empire she built while they weren't watching.